What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. We've got Joseph JoJo Diaz, 31-1, defending his IBF super featherweight, also known as junior lightweight, title versus Shavkat Rakhimov, 15-0. This championship fight is taking place on February 13th at the Fantasy Springs Resort Casino in Indio, California, and will be viewable on DAZN. In this junior lightweight 130-pound division, you've got different promotional groups that restrict potential matchmaking as you do in other divisions. Al Haymon, PBC, currently have the biggest name in the division in Gervonta Tank Davis, who's competed once up a weight class at 135 lightweight, but says that he's open to fighting at 130 or 135 for the time being. Davis was here at 130 for his last fight where he knocked out the likely future Hall of Famer Leo Santa Cruz in super dramatic fashion. One punch in what was a pretty competitive, action-packed fight all the way up until the knockout. This was 2020's knockout of the year, according to many. I had Povetkin's knockout over Dylan White as mine, but this Tank Davis uppercut knockout of Leo Santa Cruz was certainly in the top 2 or 3, and it was pretty shocking to see given Santa Cruz's durability over the years, although he was still pretty new to this 130-pound weight class. So Davis is the biggest name in the division, but is on a lonely island that is the PBC 130-pound roster. He doesn't really have anybody to fight without there being some cross-promotional effort. Top Rank, Bob Arum, ESPN, they have WBC champ Miguel Berchelt, who's about to defend against Oscar Valdez February 20th, 1 week after JoJo Diaz versus Rakhimov. Top Rank, Bob Arum also have Jamel Herring and Carl Frampton, the former 2-division champion at 122 and 126, now fighting at 130. Those two, Herring and Frampton, are about to battle for Herring's WBO belt 1 week after Berchelt Valdez. So you've got back-to-back weekends of title fights at the junior lightweight 130-pound division. Saddle up. By the way, Top Rank also has Shakur Stevenson, who doesn't currently have a belt at 130, but is one of the biggest names in the division. Now, Tevin Farmer was the IBF champ for about a year and a half, but since beating Billy Dibb for the vacant belt in August of 2018, Tevin Farmer defended that IBF title 4 times in less than 1 calendar year. Farmer had such a busy 2018-2019 on DAZN. He was probably responsible for like a significant portion of their boxing content during that stretch. But in Farmer's 5th title defense versus Joseph Diaz just before the pandemic started, we're talking the end of January 2020, JoJo Diaz just seemed to have the faster hands and was just able to let his punches go with harder, crisper, more accurate shots. And Tevin Farmer, who's usually pretty elusive defensively and very nice with the counterpunching, he just didn't have an answer for Diaz's combination punching and tenacity. It looked like Diaz just wanted it more. And Tevin Farmer, I don't know, he had something weird going on with his eyes. And I'm not referring to his lazy eye. I mean, he kept blinking and raising his eyebrows, just looking like he was having difficulty with something facially or visually. And this was taking place for several rounds to where even the commentary, knowing that Tevin Farmer has a lazy eye, couldn't help but have to acknowledge that there was something going on. It was like he kept on looking up and away and was like blinking and doing this. It was just a little weird. If you go back and watch that fight, you'll see what I'm talking about. But Diaz really took it to Farmer, and he took Farmer's title via unanimous decision. Now, a few years ago, Joseph Diaz signed to Golden Boy and then came in and started building a name and reputation. This was before Golden Boy Promotions went to DAZN. This is when HBO was still in the boxing game. You would see JoJo Diaz kicking some butt on some big major undercards. He fought on the Canelo versus Chavez Jr. undercard versus Manuel Avila. He fought on the first Canelo versus Triple G undercard versus Rafael Rivera. So Diaz was doing well. He was just cruising until he got in there with Gary Russell Jr., one of the most gifted but most frustrating champions in the game today. So JoJo Diaz got in there with Russell, and Russell was just too fast for him. JoJo's feet suddenly looked a little slow, and he was having some issues catching up to Russell for any meaningful period of time. I mean, he would try collapsing the pocket, and Russell would have already landed like 1 or 2 shots and would already be out of the line of fire, out of harm's way, or in the clinch. That Gary Russell hand speed is really something that you have to see with your own eyes. It's truly to behold. So Diaz suffered his first professional loss in a decision to Russell, and then moves to 130 and goes on a 4-fight win streak that led up to that title opportunity versus Tevin Farmer. And this fight versus Rakhimov is Diaz's first title defense since beating Farmer. Now Shakur Rakhimov, and I'm using his nickname Shakur because I haven't yet locked in on his actual first name's pronunciation. Shavkat. Now, Rakhimov is from Tajikistan. That's former South Soviet Union region. It borders China, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan, for you geography majors out there. Now, Rakhimov hasn't fought in almost a year and a half, like since September 2019. And that fight was a lesser-known regional thriller in South Africa versus Azinga Fuzili, a then undefeated South African prospect. This was a tough fight. Fuzili was flashing impressive hand speed, good movement, landing some pretty clean shots against Rakhimov. But you could also see the grit in Rakhimov and how he had to battle back after being hurt badly in the middle rounds with a body shot. Rakhimov had to take a step back, almost doubled over from the body shots. And he was on like a bit of a retreat to where you could noticeably see Fuzili targeting the body. Everyone in the arena could see that Rakhimov was hurt. So Rakhimov had to really bite down on the mouthpiece and survive that. And he sure as hell did. And then Fuzili, who was still flashing some of that hand speed and was still moving pretty well, you could see that he was starting to succumb to the pressure a little bit. Rakhimov started to rely heavily on his solid right jab, and then you started seeing more and more opportunities for him to unleash his pretty devastating straight left hand. And this is a left hand that seemed to carry sustained power even well into the 8th round. Fuzili hits the canvas, somehow gets up, and then is on the retreat, and then is soon dropped again. Just as the ref is jumping in to stop the fight, Fuzili hits the canvas face first. Fight's over. Dramatic knockout win for Rakhimov, where he was then thought to be the next in line for Tevin Farmer. But we now know that Tevin Farmer wouldn't be holding the title much longer. Now, Rakhimov has also beaten Robinson Castellanos. That's the guy who upset Yuriorkis Gamboa 4 years ago. This is back when Gamboa's only loss was to Terrence Crawford. So Castellanos gave Gamboa his second defeat. Rakhimov knocked him out in the 2nd round. In fact, all 4 of his last fights have ended in knockout. So he still has this spirit of an undefeated fighter. And you could tell by these close to even betting lines that he's got a legit shot at the title here versus JoJo Diaz. The odds makers are taking his chances very seriously. But I just see a couple of wildcard factors that jump out here. One, Rakhimov just caught COVID, and they eventually held the date after we thought that this fight was going to be canceled just a few weeks ago. So we don't really know how this affects Rakhimov's training for the fight. Also, Joseph Diaz is clearly the hometown fighter here. Not that there's going to be any sort of a tremendous crowd or any crowd. But this fight is in Indio, California. Joseph Diaz is from El Monte, California. That's right over by East Los Angeles and the city of Whittier, for you Angelinos that know what's up. To get over to Indio is just a couple of hours. That's where they hold the Coachella Music Festival. But yeah, this is a long way from home for Rakhimov. And again, he just battled COVID, whether he was showing symptoms or not. He hasn't fought in 18 months. I don't love his chances at being at the very top of his game for this 36 minutes versus Joseph Diaz. Although Diaz himself has been out of action for a year. Now, stylistically, This is pretty interesting. Diaz and Rakhimov are both left-handed, so this is the rare case of southpaw versus southpaw, which neither guy would normally prefer. See, right-handers are used to seeing righties, but do have a game plan for the occasional southpaw. Southpaws are used to being the only southpaw in the ring, so they don't really love this new look of fighting another southpaw any more than an orthodox fighter does. They're used to fighting opposite stance fighters, although those matchups, righty versus lefty, also lend themselves to inconveniences like head clashes or near head clashes because of how the feet are positioned. But southpaw versus southpaw, I think it's going to take a little time for these guys to feel comfortable in there. Now Rakhimov, again, hits really hard. Stiff jab, super hard, straight left hand, and he could take a punch and keep his head in the game. He's a patient hunter. But here, he'll be facing a guy who I think has more hand speed and more volume, more suddenness in his attacks. But so did Fuzili, have a hand speed advantage over Rakhimov. And I think that Rakhimov will look kind of slow here against Diaz, especially in the earlier rounds. I think that he'll have some trouble getting out of first gear. I do think that as the fight slows down and becomes more of a battle of attrition, that it should lean Rakhimov, who might be the harder hitter. That one is still tough to determine because I'm not sleeping on Diaz's punching power either. I might give the slight edge to Rakhimov though. But I think that Diaz's movement and fast combination punching will allow him to win a tough decision win. Maybe even a split decision win. But I think that this one is going the distance, with Diaz earning more rounds by being the slightly busier guy. What's going to make this one fun, for us viewers at least, is that Rakhimov has had to play a little catch up before. So I expect him to continue to trust in his weapons. And I think that he'll just have to put his foot on the gas a little more than he'll be able to, and needs to finish the fight strong, having to make up for some of the earlier rounds that I expect Diaz to earn. And the way that Diaz continued to turn it up versus Tevin Farmer in his last fight really makes me think that he'll just be too fast and active for Rakhimov, even down the stretch. So I've got JoJo Diaz winning this one via decision. But let me know your thoughts on this fight and on the 130-pound division. This division is really starting to pick up some steam, not only because of quality champs like Gervonta Davis, Miguel Berchelt, and then Jamel and JoJo Diaz, and the fact that 3 of them have tough title defenses coming up. But also because Shakur Stevenson is now in the division and has plans on taking a lot of these guys' titles away from them, and is showing a ton of early promise. By the way, keep your eye on prospect Chris Colbert as well. He's showing some potential. Also, don't be so quick to write off Tevin Farmer either, assuming he's not suddenly a shot or compromised fighter. He just needs another couple opportunities to get back into the mix. He's been on an extremely busy schedule, so maybe a little time off is just what he needed. We'll see. But please, leave your comments in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.